Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy podcast. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a newer, stronger foundation essential in creating your meaningful legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. As much as you like this podcast, I'm certain that you're going to love the book that I just released on Amazon, Fuel Your Legacy, The 9 Pillars to Build a Meaningful Legacy. I wrote this to share with you the experiences that I had while I was identifying my identity, how I began to create my meaningful legacy, and how you can create yours. You're going to find this book on Kindle, Amazon, and as always on my website, samknickerbocker.com. Welcome back to the Fuel Your Legacy show, and today we have another great guest. I actually met him, came across his page on Instagram, and I was really impressed with what I saw, really excited about it. I love the content that he was sharing and the value that he's offering to his audience on Instagram. I said, you know what, he's somebody that I would like to have on my podcast because I want his message to be shared broadly. I want more people to know about it. I want more people to hear it. I want more people to be thinking about it. And although it is targeted towards one maybe small demographic, I believe that same principles that we're going to talk about, same questions, they're valuable for everybody. It doesn't matter what you are or what you think you are. These questions are going to be life-changing regardless. And so his name is Chris Rodack, and his business, coaching business, is called Rising Father. You can go find that on risingfather.com. We are live on Facebook right now. So if you see this live and you want to ask questions, I've got it pulled up right here. So if you comment, I will ask him the question live on the podcast. So you're going to be an active participant of these podcasts now. If you choose to follow us on Facebook and set your alerts so that you'll know when I start the next one, so you can ask questions of the guest live. The other side of that is you're only going to get the back half and the front half of this podcast. You'll have to go to YouTube or any podcasting app to get the second half of this conversation. But while we're live on Facebook, I would encourage you to engage and ask Chris your own questions about how you could become a better father, better parent, better carer, and just better human in general. So that being said, Chris, I'm super excited to hear your full story. I gleaned a lot off your Instagram, but I'm curious to see where did you start in life? How did you get to where you are? And why are you so passionate about this aspect of helping men become better men?
Well, thanks for having me on your podcast, Sam. Glad you reached out to me. And I like what you're doing. I've got a lot of people that ask me to be on the podcast, but I saw your stuff, and I think that this will be a great fit and that we can offer your audience a good message. So I run Rising Father. It's a brand, it's a community, it's a coaching program, and I'll go back in time. So let's talk about where I grew up. So I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and come from a big Catholic family. So I have 8 brothers and sisters, 4 brothers, 4 sisters. And we grew up in a 2-bedroom house in a small town outside of Pittsburgh. And we were very tight knit. There's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of waiting in line for our one bathroom and a lot of fighting over food. So it was craziness at home, but we also had an amazing time. Almost everyone still lives around Pittsburgh right now. So probably 2-3 times a month, we have family get-togethers, we have parties, we have dinners, and we're still a very tight-knit group. Almost all of us were sent to Catholic school, so private Catholic school, which has tuition. So my dad had to work a lot. He had a good job, but he put 9 people, or probably the first 6 of us, through private schools, and the last 3 went to public school. But it's expensive. So because of that, he had to work a lot. He had to take on extra jobs. He delivered papers at midnight to 2 a.m. and he took us on those trips with him. So I remember waking up really early in the morning, smell of ink, jumping in the station wagon. We had one of those old station wagons where the seats faced backwards, and me and my brothers would sit in the back, and my dad would wake us up. We'd go down to the paper place. He'd load up like 500 papers in the back of the station wagon, and we would go deliver papers for hours. And for me, I remember the fumes of the ink and the fumes of the exhaust. And that was what I remember from that. And it was just part of him constantly having to provide for us so that he could give us the life that we had. We weren't rich. We weren't upper middle class, probably lower middle class. But 11 people in a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. And I shared my bedroom with 4 people. But through all that, it created a real sense of family, a real sense of community. And honestly, one of the things that caused me to make Rising Father was my dad was out working so much. I really missed him as a kid. I didn't see him a ton. He was there for us. He did a lot for us. He did spend a lot of time with us. And he created some really special, intentional moments with us. But I still wanted to see him more. And for me, as a father, I have 2 kids, we're cut off. That is one of the things that I really want to do with my kids, is make sure that I'm there all the time. I'm going to make sure that I'm intentional with my time with them. I'm creating special moments. So I'm going to recreate some of the moments that my dad did with me that were so special and great. But I also want to make sure that I'm giving them lots of time where I can. So I don't want any moment to pass that that I don't take for granted. So I grew up outside of Pittsburgh, and then I went to high school here. I went to college in Youngstown, Ohio. I had a music ed degree. So I went to school for music education, played saxophone. I was the worst saxophonist whenever I joined, and whenever I left, I was the best, and I won some national competitions and really worked my butt off. I was practicing 6 to 8 hours a day to be the best saxophone player I could be. So I did that, got some music teacher jobs, and up until the last summer, up until about 4 months ago, I was a full-time music teacher until I was able to grow this Rising Father business to a point where I was able to quit my teaching job. And Rising Father started as a brand probably 2.5 years ago. My podcast, the Rising Father podcast, started about a year ago. And the brand started as kind of like a blog style website where posting in Instagram, posting stuff about being in shape, being athletic, being a good husband, being a good father, and just being the best man you can be. So it's just general educational, informational, entertaining content. And then as I grew with the brand and had my own physical transformation in life and in business and as a father and husband, the message became more honed in, more meaningful, more transformational, which led me to creating a coaching business, which is flourishing right now and growing really fast. We have guys ages 20s to 50s in 6 different countries. And we have guys remaking themselves physically, emotionally. We have people starting businesses, selling businesses, becoming disciplined, becoming the best men they can be, just having breakthroughs. It's all about guys who are stuck in place and becoming unstuck and having a breakthrough. So as I did that with my own life, now I help other guys do that as well. And we have a large community of men called the Rising Fathers, where it's not just me lifting these guys up. These guys are lifting each other's up. We have high-level business owners. We have fitness coaches, all kind of great people in this group who help each other rise in every aspect. So, and that brings me to here now talking to you. So grew this Rising Father program, and Instagram and all social media stuff is taking off, and that's where you found me.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, yeah, it's amazing. I think that one of the big parts of life that gets overlooked often and undervalued is the simpleness of willing to be seen. And a lot of, for different reasons for everybody, a lot of childhood often leads to people not wanting to be seen due to maybe overparenting or just maybe even friendships or peer pressure, where being noticed and being seen is not looked at as a good thing. And so then all of our skills and talents, often we hide because we don't want to be noticed for them. When we're complimented on them, we get the habit or the instinct is to put ourselves down in a false sense of humility and not be recognized, because if we're recognized, then we're different and then we stand out. And the biggest element of success that I've seen in successful people is they weren't scared to stand out. They weren't scared to be seen. And what's cool is that you started your business not necessarily with the intention to start a business, it doesn't sound like, but just to, share who you were, share your gifts with the world. And what's interesting is sometimes we don't always feel like our gifts are gifts. they just are who we are. And so we're just sharing who we are. And then other people see the gift in us. And then they say, hey, how can I get some of that in my life? So it's fascinating. Let's go back though to the beginning. I'm not from Pittsburgh, although I do like Pennsylvania a lot, but I'm the 7th of 11 kids. So I can see where you're at.
Wow.
What number are you in
I'm number 3.
You're number 3. So you're on the older side there. 7th of 11. We had 7 boys, 4 girls. So pretty similar family makeup. And the house that we grew up in initially, you had 2 bedrooms. That's nice. We had, when I was born, so by the time I was born, I'm the 7th child. We were living in our grandma's house. I was born in my grandma's living room. And then my dad's a midwife. And then we moved into a house shortly after I was born where there was just one room. And my older brother slept out in a 13-foot camper trailer. We had one bathroom that was barely a bathroom. Like there was a toilet installed on rough concrete and a shower that had been kind of placed in the corner and hooked up to water, but you could see all the piping, everything. It was just rough. And then even up into my early childhood, we would sleep underneath the stairs. Like I used to say like Harry Potter until I watched Harry Potter and found out he was freaking rich. We had like open wiring, open insulation. It's not quite the same house as Harry Potter's, but I think that one of the notes I made here is, there's an element, and I'm going to use the word crisis, even though it may not have been any one specific crisis, but like hard times build connection. When you're going through things that aren't always fun, I find that builds connection. I'm curious in your life, how have you found that to be true with your family? Things that were maybe less than ideal or crisis-ish that kind of bonded your family together in a way that you don't know, maybe it wouldn't have been the same without that significant experience.
My current family.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see. Well, we had, first off, I think just what you're saying is true. Yes. That whenever you're with a crisis with people that you can bond, you can either tear you apart or it can bond you depending on your perspective and how you handle it. If you are emotionally immature and you don't have strategies to handle your emotions and you don't know how to deal with this, then it could really tear you apart. And that's where a lot of relationships and marriages and families do fall apart. We are not like that though. We have strengthened our relationships and came together over different crises. My sister died of brain cancer when we were little, and that was a horrible thing. It was traumatic. But in terms of me and my wife, I saw another side of her I never had. She saw a side of me she never did. And in terms of our whole family, it made us huddle together and come together. So that can happen. So if the crisis happens, if the trauma happens, and you do not start to turn on each other, then it indeed can strengthen those connections. Yeah.
No, I thank you for sharing that. It sucks to lose a loved one. My little sister died of leukemia 2 years ago. So,
sorry.
Yeah, it's just, it's interesting. The things that you think, oh, that'll never happen in my family. That'll never happen. And then it happens. You're like, whoa. So I feel you there. With your mom and your dad, so you talked a lot about your dad and kind of what he was doing and how he worked and his work ethic. What was the situation with your mom? What did watching your mom teach you about being a good father?
Well, I mean, she worked her butt off. She had, 9 kids, and we had one fridge. Like, and now I have 4 kids. There's 4 of us, and we have 2 fridges. I don't know how we did it, but we had one fridge and 11 people in the house. Somehow, we went through 2 gallons of milk a day. I don't know where. Like, we went to the grocery store around us was called Giant Eagle. We went, it seems like every other day, just 2 full grocery carts full of groceries. And like, my God, how much money? It was probably $3,000 a month on groceries, I would think. But she was an amazing cook. She is an amazing cook. And she was just constantly making amazing meals for whenever we came home from school, for dinner, just hours cooking, cleaning constantly because we were jerks and we were just making a mess of the house and breaking everything. One of the things we did is we had one stairwell, but we had our house at high ceiling. So it was a big stairwell. She told us not to, but we just ignored her. We would take a trash can to the top of the stairwell, fill it with stuffed animals, shove one of our brothers or sisters in the trash can and push them down the stairwell so they would roll. And they would just crash into the closet door at the end and break the closet door. Like, we just were animals destroying the house. But she just was always taking care of everyone, patients being tested, making us amazing food, just being an awesome mom nonstop for years. And there were diapers in the house for most of her life. And it was just complete service. So what that taught me is, yeah, she kind of steals any excuse that I might have to say I was too tired, things are too rough, or, things are too crazy with my two kids or whatever it is. Cause I can just think back to her and be like, well, I am nowhere near as busy or stressed out or tired or did anything that she was doing. So I always have that in the back of my head.
No, that's awesome. Did you feel like you got one-on-one attention from your mom?
Yeah, she was intentional about doing that.
That's awesome. We had a similar thing in our stairwell, but we actually made a slide. So it was more organized. Half of our stairwell was a slide. The other half was stairs. And yeah, same thing though. The door at the bottom of the stairs multiple times went through that wall or that door. Yeah. And, we had a slide. So it was a little bit, a little faster, maybe. I don't know. So then the other thing is, from a parenting perspective. So this is things that I didn't think about when I first started being a dad. I don't know that I really thought about being a dad. I thought a lot about being a husband, and I feel like I prepared myself well, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, to be a good husband. What I didn't think about as much is being a father. I was excited to be a dad. I was excited to have kids. I was excited to help my wife become a mother because that was one of her dreams when we got married. Found out that it's not necessarily, she doesn't love that part of life right now as the kids are young, but I think she will like it more as she's able to communicate more with the kids. But the point is, I was excited about it, but I wasn't intentional about being a great dad or a great father. I was more intentional in my life about being a great husband. So I put a lot of time and effort into researching and going through courses and reading and understanding who I was as an individual, and then how that was going to play into a relationship. When I was dating, I went on over 100, dated 100 different girls in about a year and a half time period, 2 or 3 dates a day, sometimes just constant dates, trying to find the girl that I actually would pair well with. And so I put a lot of time and effort and energy into finding a good life partner. But I didn't do any of those things to become a good dad. And so it's fascinating, this idea of becoming a good dad, because I called my mom and dad maybe 6 months to a year ago. And I asked him, you had 11 kids. What was your strategy? Because I'm just failing here. I feel like I'm failing as a dad, What was your strategy? And their strategy, and I'm not saying that I have to adopt this, but their strategy was that by the time we were 14, they wanted us all to be independent, know a skill that we could make money doing and operate in society. If they were to disappear or we lost them, we would be just fine at the age of 14. So basically an adult at 14. And they accomplished that, but I'm the 7th, right? And they did that pretty much for all of their children. So that's a lot of time and energy and intentional to create something. And they had decided that either right at my oldest brother, or before they had any children. So they were very intentional about being a father. So what I'm curious about is, did you also have intention built into being a father before you had children, or are these things you're discovering after you have kids? You're like, man, I want to be this way for my children.
Well, it's both. For me, I always wanted to be a father. Whenever I was a kid, I imagined myself being a father, and I imagined myself getting married, imagined myself what I would do with my kids. Whenever I was a kid, I remember being in my bedroom planning what I'd be doing with my kids. So I always wanted to be a father. It was always the most important thing in the world to me. And then after I had my kids, it was even more important to me. And for me, it was why is it so important? Well, because if you can leave your own head and think about someone else's perspective, you have to imagine the perspective of the world from your child. Life can get inconvenient, life can get crazy and chaotic as parents, but that's just if you let that rule your life, then you're just being extremely selfish, because there's a little child who depends on you 1000%. And if you allow your emotions to rule their life, or your inability to master your emotions, or whatever the case may be, then they're going to be punished based on our adult inability to handle ourselves. So for me as a father, my job is to first off master myself so that I can be the best father I can be for them. The way I can do that is by being the best person I can be. Because life's going to get chaotic. Life's hard. Life's crazy. It's not nearly as crazy as it was for my mom, who had 9 kids running around and crashing into doors. But I have to be able to handle that. So, and life is going to be different. Like our roles as father will be different for my dad, who had 9 kids in his house, and me, who has 2 kids in the house. Like, just for the pure logistical standpoint, I will have more time to spend with each kid. My dad did something they just called them turnouts, where once a month they would try to take one of us individually to a restaurant or something to spend one-on-one time with. And they couldn't do that forever because it just got really expensive. But they still took us to the park, and they did stuff like that with us to be really intentional with their time with us. And for me, I can do that a lot more because I only have 2 kids. So and then also so I try to be intentional, but I also try every single day to write down, what am I doing as a husband and father that I need to stop doing, and what do I need to continue doing, and what do I need to add? So these being a husband and father, man, is an extremely intentional thing for me, and just baked into what we do in the Rising Fathers.
No, that's awesome. So with that, because you're very intentional with that, and you've always, it sounds like from a very young age, you were thinking about being a father. I definitely wasn't. I was thinking about being a husband, and I'm grateful that I prepared well for that. I think that is equally important to both, but it is fascinating to think of imagining your life from your child's perspective and taking that time. My dad worked nights pretty much most of my life. I would say for the first 5 or 6 years, he actually was a stay-at-home dad and my mom worked. But then after that, at least, I don't know if all the time frames are perfect. My memory is hazy, but somewhere around there, he went to work and started working nights as a DSL troubleshooter, internet guy. And he would sleep during the day and be gone. So our time together was, I would say, relatively short on a daily basis. But he did teach me. We learned fixing cars and life lessons in that area, where you got to do it with the paper. But I'm curious, what were some of those early morning conversations? Because I delivered a paper, mostly with my brother though, but what were some of those early morning conversations that you feel like were really formative that he did have conversations with you about while you guys were delivering papers?
I'll be really honest with you. I don't remember. I remember being in the back of the station wagon with my brothers really early in the morning, extremely tired, wanting to be asleep, and daring each other to walk up these like haunted looking houses and throw the paper on the front porch. Like that is and I remember one time my mom was driving because my dad was sick or something, and she backed into a telephone pole, and we were afraid it was going to crush us and kill us. Like those are the things I remember from these papers. I don't remember a single thing we talked about. I'm really honest with you.
No, I appreciate
I'm sure there were conversations happening. Actually, I think my dad talked a lot about having to do things you don't want to do just to provide and to be a hard worker. My dad was a really hard worker, always working. So there were many times when he just said we were going to go out and deliver papers, and we were probably screaming and yelling that we didn't want to. And I'm sure he had many talks with us at that point about, no, get your ass up and deliver these papers because you're going to, because I said so.
Yeah, no, and I really appreciate that, the honesty as well. I don't know necessarily remembering tons of conversations either, but I was curious if you did. But I think that for me, it's actually fascinating. My dad, because of his work schedule, he wasn't there a lot in the mornings because he was still at work, and then he'd come home around 8 a.m. But he aligned with some family friends. Now they're like really good friends, but that I would go on early morning walks, not delivering papers, but just early morning walks with this friend who was, I think he was about the same age as my dad, but who I learned a lot of my life lessons from as far as being a man came from him. But if you talk to my dad, their ideas of what a man should be is very similar. So he provided mentorship, even though he wasn't necessarily there doing it himself all the time. And I think that was really helpful. Something that my father gave me was the gift of mentorship. And I think that sometimes that gets overlooked as well. I'm curious, something you mentioned earlier about, punishment and controlling your emotions. This is something that I don't feel was done well in my childhood, as far as the difference between punishment, discipline, and teaching. Like, I don't feel like there was a clear separation. It was all just kind of meh. And so I've been to therapy for years trying to figure out, hey, what was good? What was bad? What would I not want to take into my family? What would I take into my family? But how do you balance that? Like, the mantle of teaching your children how to be good humans, kind, loving, all those things, while also still having very clear expectations, boundaries, and training them ultimately to be productive, happy, loving, caring human beings.
There's nuance to it. It can't be hard and fast rules. You have to understand yourself. You have to understand your kids, and you have to have a different approach for each one. Like, you can't approach it academically, where if you take you read a 10-step program and you apply it to each kid. You have to really understand each child. Because my son and daughter could be born by different families. They're just completely different. My daughter's super organized, laser closeout, color coordinated the night before. My kid likes to go to school, messy hair, hoodie backwards, and mismatched socks. They're just completely different way to approach both of them. But you have to, once again, it's perspective. You have to understand how you're talking to your kids, the actions that you're taking, and how you're coming off to them. Because from a kid's perspective, you're God to them. And if you look at even psychological studies and the actual biology of a kid, any newborn, it could be a pet, it could be a baby, any new thing looks at its parent as if it's omnipresent, as if it's the only thing in the world to them. And we as adults, we don't remember what that's like. But as a really little kid, they look up to us like we're God. So even if we can get annoyed sometimes, we can get irritated over little things they do wrong. And so when we snap, it's just this horrible, monstrous person just killing them on the inside and just destroying their confidence. So there's nuance to it. You have to have the emotional maturity to control yourself, and you have to have some strategies in place for when my kid does this, I will have this kind of reaction. So for example, I just posted about this the other day. Our kids do stuff to piss us off. As they get older, they do more of those things. As they get older, you have less patience for it. Because when they're small, they might be doing the same kind of thing. Like, say, if they're 2 years old, they might do a similar intentioned thing as whenever they're 9. But when they're 2, it's still cute, and you have all the patience in the world for them. When they're 9, you have less patience in the world for them. Our kids need to see that we are their emotional rock, that we can't be swayed. Because if we flip the lid, start screaming and yelling, and lose control over ourselves, then that steals the confidence our kids have in us as someone who's reliable and they can lean on. Because no longer are we someone who can control ourselves, because we can't even, or that can look after them, because we can't even control ourselves anymore. So this is just one specific strategy where a lot of times our kids will say things to get under our skin. They're testing us. They're trying to see if they're powerful enough to get us to flip the lid. And that is our time to shine as parents. That's our time to say, no, I'm still going to teach you a lesson. I still might have to discipline you. I still might have to, put you in your place, but you can't make me lose who I am as a person. And our kids appreciate that. They even if they're hurling insults, even if they're screaming and crying, like my son a couple months ago had a crazy tantrum over something really, really small, super insignificant. He can get emotional. And he started insulting us. I could have got really upset, emotional, and started screaming back at him because he insulted me. But I'm an adult. I'm 36 years old. I'm not going to have a 9-year-old control my emotional principles and priorities. So I said, I have to address it. I said, Nathan, that was inappropriate. You can't do that. That was rude, and you hurt my feelings. And then, go to your room or whatever it is. But I have to still be strong and stoic and be the rock for my kids. So there's nuance to it. And I would have had a different approach with my daughter. So you have to understand your kids, and you have to, once again, you have to be in control of yourself. You can't allow your emotions to dictate your disciplining consequences. This happens a lot of times. I know a lot of parents I know who get personally, they let the things their kids do personally affect them. And then their responses to their kids are not thought out. They're emotional responses. It's like, a physical reaction. Someone punches you, you punch back. That's how they're reacting to their kids. And once again, what their kid is seeing from their perspective, they're seeing the person that means everything to them is coming after them, also can't handle themselves. They can't be relied on. When our kids don't feel safe and they need someone to hold them and to feel safe, they might not think of you now because you can't even control yourself. That's why we have to master ourselves.
Yeah, no, I love it. I have a bunch of questions. We're going to sign off of Facebook here for right now. But one of the questions that we're going to be getting into is we're going to find out hopefully a little bit more about what started it. How does his wife and his children experience him? And then also what the follow-up question right now is, what are you doing intentionally to learn your children? Because there's a lot of talk so far about you have to get to know your child. You have to spend time with your child. Well, what are those things that you're doing? So after the break here, we're going to go right into that, and we'll see you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy show. You're welcome to set an alarm on your phone so you can be involved in the conversation on Facebook for the next episode. Also, you can find this podcast on any area of any podcasting app, Apple, Google Play, any of those places you're going to be able to find the podcast. So have a great day. Perfect. So let's dive into this. So what are you doing right now to actually date, for lack of a better word? I don't know what a better word for it would be, but to learn your children, what are you doing as an active process to make that happen?
You got to have time to spend with them. So you have to time block time in. For me, I time block every day, every 30 minutes. So I have written in family time, kid time, wife time. For example, before they go to school, I have a morning routine. I wake up at 3:45 every day, go straight to the gym, and I take a cold shower, I journal, I clean the house, I do stuff like that during this block of time before the rest of my family wakes up. And then whenever my kids wake up, from then till the time they go to school is kid time. So it's written into my schedule. It says kids. So for about 45 minutes, I make them breakfast. I'll sit with them while they eat their cereal. This morning, we just sat outside on the patio and just talked while they ate, and the dog was next to us. So just investing time. Same thing happens in the evening. I have time with the kids there. I do jujitsu with my kids. So I intentionally picked an activity that I could do with my kids that helped us both grow, and we could spend time together. So we do jujitsu together. My daughter and son both do jujitsu with me. I coach the kids' jujitsu class. And through that, I'm teaching them. I get to see them struggle, get to see them be successful, test themselves, and I get to know them in there. Other things I do is at the end of each night, I have an evening routine that I do. And one of the things I do is work on my kids' identity. And this is something that's really effective that anyone could start implementing. But with each kid, we have about 10 to 15 minutes of no screen time with them. And I ask them, what did you do today that makes you strong? What did you do today that makes you friendly? What did you do today that makes you smart? And then also and they have to tell me specific things they did that reinforce this identity. And then we do the same thing for the next day. What are you going to do tomorrow? And what this does is first off, it just gets us talking. Second off, it helps them craft a vision of themselves that is positive, because many kids, especially they get into the middle school age, start to have a negative identity of themselves through negative self-talk, through other friends, through YouTube and TV. So this helps them have positive thoughts going through their brains as they're going to sleep. And it kind of goes through their head all day. Then they wake up thinking about the things we talked about. And then in the morning, I'm there with them again, talking again. So first off, you just have to have time to spend with them. You have to be intentional, and we're all busy, but everyone could be more organized. Everyone could be more scheduled out. Everyone could be more disciplined, more efficient with their time, to where when you're with your kids, you're more present. Because if you're not disciplined and you're not organized throughout the day, it doesn't matter how much time you have with your family. You're not going to be mentally there. You're going to be thinking about things you didn't do. So be disciplined and organized throughout the day so you can be present with your family. And then also just actually schedule that time in to when you do have opportunities for them. And then when you have the time, be intentional about it. Schedule in things you can do where you can actually talk to them, where you can actually interact. Playing video games for me, that's not a good one, because I don't get to interact with my kids a lot. I still do play video games with them occasionally, but I would rather go to walk, play soccer, be outside with them, something like that.
Sure. Yeah, no, it's been interesting. The little tiny baby phase was not as fun for me, but as they've gotten older, I've enjoyed it a lot more because there's more opportunity to go play soccer, go play catch, go play basketball, and do things that are more active. I have struggled in the past with just the idea that a 3 to 5 minute interaction is sometimes all that their brain can handle. It feels like. And so it's like, okay, I have to be okay with a 3 to 5 minute interaction rather than, hey, let's go do something for 30 minutes. They may not want to do anything for 30 minutes, or you have to be ready to do a lot of different things, has been kind of my experience. So I used to have 3-hour blocks where I scheduled 3 hours with my family all at one time. And about a month and a half ago, we switched it to where now I do like an hour and a half in the morning and an hour and a half later in the day. And that seems to work better because it's just about the right amount of time to interact with everybody, spend time with all of them, and then go back to work when they're done interacting with me. So it's interesting. One of the things you said is nuanced, right? Finding what's going to work in your situation with your kids where they are still enjoying the process and they're excited for that is helpful. So how'd you meet your wife? What was that experience, and how much was this discussed before you got married, how you were going to raise your children?
We met in college at music school, both at Youngstown State University. And she was a freshman, I was a sophomore. And we met in college. So it was in the practice rooms. I think I heard her singing. She's an amazing singer. We were both music majors. So I just went and started talking to her. And then after that, we just started dating. And so I dated her from all throughout college. So for her 4 years. And then I got my first job after that in Salem, Ohio. And then we got married right after that. So we probably dated for 4 years before we got married. And yeah, we talked about how we were going to raise our kids, off and on throughout that time after we agreed that, yeah, we're going to get married and have kids, obviously. But yeah, so it was something we talked about, where we wanted to live, what we were going to be like as parents. Some of those things happen, some of those things don't happen. But yeah, we definitely talked about it.
And just because I'm curious, as far as religion wise, were you guys both of the same religion when you got married? Were you different religions?
No, different religions.
And how did that play into the conversation of how you were going to raise your children, as far as from a religious faith belief?
We just talked about it. We were going to be flexible. So she was raised Methodist. I was raised Catholic. Right now we go to a non-denominational Christian church, and it wasn't something where we were making hard and fast lines in the sand. We said, we're going to go through life and adapt and see what happens.
Yeah, no, I love it. These are just a lot of areas that, one, marriage just in general in our society is like, there's a higher than 50% divorce rate. So it's a lot of these things. Something was really passionate about when I was pre-marriage, when I was preparing to get married was trying to identify like what are the things that are most important and what's not most important to me and would be to my spouse, and have a lot of these conversations before. And that's one of the things that although my wife and I, we don't really know what we're doing as parents, like we're definitely still adjusting with where we're at. There's a lot of stuff that I loved about my childhood that it's just really hard to duplicate in our world today. The sense of freedom. I was homeschooled, so we got to like run the town, do whatever. And now if our kids go around the corner, then all the neighbors are like, "Oh my gosh, your kid's out." And it's like, we're in a neighborhood. It's fine. Like they can go up and down the street, but so certain just social constructs that are hard to duplicate how I grew up versus how my kids are being raised. But it is fascinating to see that even though we aren't sure what direction entirely, my wife and I have great communication. I think that plays a big role into being a great father, is having the support and confidence of your wife. And vice versa, having the trust and confidence in my wife, because at the end of the day, and maybe you are the same, when you were working, was your wife also working, or was she was she working, both of you guys, or just you?
Yeah, we've both always had jobs.
Always had jobs, right? So that's another thing, is like, as you're raising kids, who's in charge of the kids and whose primary role, although both people are involved, whose primary role is that aspect versus the income aspect. In my my wife and kids, I've always been the one who is primarily income earner, and my wife has been stay-at-home mom. And so there's been a lot of aspects of different rules in the house for the children, things that I actually just defer to my wife, because she's the one who gets to deal with the kids all day. So it's like, if you have certain boundaries or guidelines, then I'm going to uphold those. And then if I feel that there's something that needs to be altered, then I discuss it with her, and then we implement that together, rather than just like, and I also work from home. So it's a very interesting working from home, but not being in charge all the time is a fascinating dynamic, but I think it works well with good communication.
Yeah. And my perspective isn't that anyone's in charge, any one person. I think it's more of a team aspect where you do have to communicate and everything needs talked about. It's not, she has her rules and I have my rules. For me, it's, we are in this together and we're one being. Like me and my wife are one thing. We do the house, me and her are connected. She's number one priority. And then the kids are part of that. They fit into and under our umbrella of our life right now. Because at some point they are going to leave, and it'll be me and my wife. So she has to come first. She's the number one priority. But that doesn't mean that anyone is secondary. That doesn't mean anyone gets the shaft. Nothing like that. That just means that we can't be shaken, that we have to be seen together, strong, the rock together, and we have to be on the same page. Mm-hmm. Like if it's like she has her things and I have my things, then the kids are, once again, won't feel safe. They won't feel secure. It will give them a bad model for their own husbands and wives whenever they're older. They have to, how I am with my wife is the only thing my kids are going to have to reference whenever they choose their husbands and wives.
Yep, I agree. And I think that example really, really matters. How your interaction is, how you treat each other, but also, as you're mentioning, like when it comes down to how you're parenting, they need to be on the same page. So completely agree. So then with the Rising Fathers coaching program, explain a little bit more about what that looks like. What are some of the results or outcomes of some of the people who join that? And then where would somebody go if they wanted to be a part of your group? I don't know what to call it, your movement.
Yeah. So if you want to talk to me, find me on Instagram. It's the best way to reach out. Just send me a direct message. It's just Rising Father. And guys are having unbelievable breakthroughs. So we have guys who need to lose weight in the group. Got a guy who's 2.5 months in. He's down 30 pounds, looks completely different. He went from, on his first call with me, he said he had one emotion. His wife asked him who he was. She said she didn't even recognize him anymore. And he was failing as a husband and father. And now his whole family is time blocking. His whole family is tracking their macros, nutrition together, working out together. And he was able to sell a business. He's waking up at 3 a.m. every single day, starting a new business, starting a brand that I'm helping him build. So his entire life is changed. He's made about a decade of progress in 2.5 months. Another guy, I have 3 guys who've gone sober over the past 3 months. All 3 of them had drinking problems, and they've given up alcohol, or they've been able to control it. I had one guy who's in Australia. He had a drinking problem. Now he has like 1 drink a month. And his transformation's up on my Instagram page. He's also completely transformed his body, also trying to raise a business. I've got a 53-year-old guy, not a father, just a single 53-year-old guy who had a big beer gut, lost it. Now he has bicep veins, and he's also building a business, also creating a brand and inspiring people. I've had multiple guys who are on the brink of divorce with their wives, and now we're having sex multiple times a week, having the best relationships of their lives. So it's a breakthrough group. It's where you go and we take you through 4 different pillars. So fitness is one of those pillars. None of this stuff can happen unless you get in shape. None of these things can happen unless you can push yourself physically and discipline yourself. Because I don't care what your goals are. If you can't stop yourself from eating a donut, you can't stop yourself from doing anything hard. If you're undisciplined with your body, you're going to be undisciplined everywhere. So fitness comes first. The second aspect is tribe. And that means accountability. That means a brotherhood. That means networking with high-level guys. We have accountability groups in our program where you have to post your wake-up times, your workouts, your fatherhood and marriage checklists, macros, all that kind of stuff. Perspective is one of our pillars. That means we work on rewiring our brains, rewriting our stories as husbands and fathers and men, and digging into our past and pulling things up that we don't want to look at, but actually figuring out how those help us rise. And then preparation. That's how to be professional with our personal and professional lives. That's time blocking, scheduling, being disciplined, mind mapping our day and thoughts. And it's a breakthrough group. If you want to reach out and talk more about it, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram.
Yeah, no, I love that. And just, go follow him on Instagram. Maybe you're not confident about whether you want to reach out or not, but just click the follow as you're on social media, which everybody spends some time there. I feel like at this point, go just listen to his content. He's sharing a lot of individual things. We talked about kind of the macro vision of what this whole thing is and maybe how to be a dad or a father, but there's so much life that's nuanced. One of the things that I wrote down that's like really a compliment to you is the way you tell stories and the ability to tell a story with details and being able to say, look, I remember getting in the back of the car and I remember the fumes of ink and exhaust, like those things. It's those details that bring people into the moment with you. And you're very good in your storytelling of those little nuanced things that matter. The story of going up to a haunted house and it sounds like, well, who knows what that looks like? Everybody has the image in their mind. And like, would I do that? Those are little things that not only are they good here in this setting, but everybody has stories in their life. And I believe that we're given these stories, we're given these experiences to share with others. Unfortunately, not everybody wants to be seen and heard, but also people necessarily don't know how to share those stories in an impactful way that's going to be memorable. And so that's another aspect of, if you go talk to somebody like Chris, not only can he help you process through and help you make the transformations and the breakthroughs, but breakthroughs are great for yourself. They're really great when you can help transfer those breakthroughs to the next generation, because wise people learn from other people's experiences, not mistakes, but other people's experiences. And that comes from somebody else being able to communicate their experience in a way that you can actually glean from it. So thank you so much, Chris, for coming on here and being a light of what an exemplary father would be, and then helping other people. Once you figure something out, go and help other people accomplish the similar objective. That's why I reached out to you. I consumed quite a few of your videos on Instagram. I was like, hey, I really like where this guy's head's at. I like the process that he's going through. And I like that he's unashamed to share and have a conversation. I mean, it's a conversation that needs to be had. And there's a lot of men who aren't sure where to go to get information about where to be a good man. For better or worse, I think it's worse that that's the case nowadays, but we live in an isolated world on social media often. And that doesn't mean that you have to be isolated. You can be on social media and be connected if you choose to be. And if you choose to, just as you're saying about being intentional, mind mapping, all these things, it's the same way with social media. If you wonder where your head's at, you can go look at your For You page on any app and the algorithm will tell you what you spend the most time consuming.
Yeah.
And I think that's a very telling thing. If you want, hey, team, where are you at? Where are you at? Where are you at? Pull up your social media, click your For You page. I know what you're looking at. I know what you're spending time looking at. And whether it's business, like what is the thing that interests you? And that's a good, maybe a reality check for yourself, is just analyze your social media and what do you see? And what are you seeing? What's being fed to you? And then if you need help learning how to reset your algorithm, then you should reach out to, if you don't know, I don't know if you know how to do that, Chris, but reach out to me. I can help you reset the algorithm so that you can get the good things into your view and get rid of the stuff that you don't want to be seeing that are just wasting your time. So anyways, lots to there. I'm so excited for this to go out, and thank you so much. Any last words, Chris?
It was awesome. Appreciate it. And any last thing I could say is that it doesn't matter where you are in your life, whatever age you are, whatever job you're in, you can literally still do anything you want to do, and a lot of times guys get stuck because they see the thing they want to do and it's this massive mountain in front of them. They think, oh, I can't get started until I have everything planned out and perfect. But just take one small step. Just spend 5 minutes on whatever you want to do today, and then that's a win.
Yep, absolutely. Awesome. Well, you can go to Rising Father. Is it Rising Father or Rising Fathers?
Just risingfather.com. But if you want to talk about anything that I've talked about today, just hit me up on Instagram.
Okay. Awesome. Instagram, risingfather.com, or Rising Father on Instagram, correct? Yep. Awesome. Okay. We'll talk to you later and catch you guys next time on the Fuel Your Legacy Show. Thanks for joining us. If what you heard today resonates with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me. And if you do give me a shout out, I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thanks to all of those who've left a review. It helps spread the message of what it takes to build a legacy that lasts. And we'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy.